And then Clay posts a thing saying he's starting the recording. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's great. There goes my
Okay.
political career.
Straighten up, boys. How are you, Mr. Hopewell? I haven't seen you for a few days.
It's been a few, hasn't it? I'm doing
Yeah.
well. Yeah. Been busy with the grandkids for a couple times for helping our kids out and trying to get myself healthy again. So I leave for Hawaii in 3 weeks, so for a week. So
Oh,
Oh, that
where
sounds
are you
fun.
going?
Which
Where are you
island?
going? Where are you going, Charlie?
we're going to Kauai. We've never been to Kauai. We have friends, and we were going to go prior to or during the COVID thing, but of course that all got washed away. But we're really anxious to go over. So
Yeah, we're my wife and I, or actually the entire family, is going over November 1st through the 10th to Maui.
to Maui. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Where are you going to stay in Maui?
in the Kapo and Kaanapali area.
To Anapali area? Yeah.
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 I'm Todd. I'm being asked to admit people into the meeting.
That's
I don't
okay.
know
Just go ahead and serve your duty as a board member and admit him, will you?
Okay. Okay. Do I get extra paid for this? Or?
Yeah, well, we can talk about that.
Okay, you're going to double my salary, aren't you?
I'll have to say no, but yeah, we can talk. Hi, Martha. Hi, Venkat.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I was going to say, be careful on the salary thing because Venkat's on here, and we all know.
Hey, Venkat, on that document I sent you with the bubbles, do you want me to share while you're talking to it, or do you want to?
I can share, Todd. I have it up in front of me. So.
Okay, awesome.
If it doesn't work, I'll
Thank you.
screen for now.
Well, maybe you can join that conversation about pay with Ken and I, and it will be an interesting conversation, but I'll have to pleasantly decline.
I'll already tell you I'm voting no. Real quick, Todd, did you see the note from Michael from Bizor, Oregon, and Sherry?
Yes, I did.
Yeah,
that's
so
great. That's great.
I was really pleased about that. Actually, they've been great.
Yeah, they've been super responsive and interested.
Mm-hmm. I think Melissa has really been pushing as well, which I really thank her for connectivity.
Yeah. Well, hey there, Kim. How are you?
Hi, Todd. Hi, everybody. I'm excellent. How are you?
Well, yeah. Thanks for asking.
Hi, Venkat. Hi, Ken. Hi, Charlie. This is great.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, Kim.
Martha Schrader. Good to see you. Been a while.
Oh, you're on mute, Martha.
Well, thank you. You look great too, Kim.
Thank you.
How's your son doing?
Oh, he's fantastic. He just got engaged.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Hey, congrats.
He got engaged in the spring and turned 30 in September, which blows my mind. Can you believe that, Martha?
Wow.
Yeah.
No, I can't.
Martha was my son's first employer back when he was like 13 or 14.
He was 14. Yeah, we had him
on the
working
farm.
on the farm. Yep.
Yeah.
It was great. Taught him a great
Nice.
work ethic. He's working for a NGO out of the UK now, focusing on electrical vehicles.
Oh, wow.
So he's
Oh,
doing
that's
great
cool.
stuff. Yeah, great
Is
stuff.
he in the UK now, or is he in DC?
He's in Brooklyn.
He's in Brooklyn.
He's in Brooklyn. Yep.
He's in New York. All right.
He's in New York. He's been in New York for about 4 years now, and but his region is the entire North America. It's just insane. I know. Working with companies to electrify their fleets.
Oh,
Hmm.
fantastic.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
good stuff.
I love that.
I know, and well, one of these days he is going to move back to Oregon. So I have a list of possible people he can connect with when he gets
Okay.
when he makes that
I
decision.
think you know somebody.
I know somebody.
All right. Well, let's get started. Welcome everyone to our executive committee meeting, our fall executive committee meeting. And I think what we will do is I want to set up our meeting because we're doing this a little bit differently compared to some of our past meetings based on the feedback that we received from our meeting that we had last month with the broader group. So today what we're going to do is we'll go through our usual housekeeping type things, but then we're going to spend some time kind of talking about who we are, what we're responsible for, what are our priorities, what are our roles and responsibilities, et cetera. And so using that framework then to kind of say, you know, based on the discussion that we had last month about how we can be bolder and be better advocates and how do we help, you know, sort of bring everything together in a way that's more powerful. How can we think about that maybe through a framework? And then we'll try out a proposed framework that Todd has and apply it against a presentation that we'll have from Mentor Match. So those of you that went to the last kick meeting would have heard Stacey Green present. And so she'll come in and talk about our program. And then we'll use this framework for how we might as a team sort of coalesce and talk about how we might get behind certain things or not, depending on, you know, what we think of the priorities, et cetera, that we'll have set up ahead of the discussion. So I'm really excited. It's a little different. And so, you know, it's not going to be like super polished, but we're gonna work through this and then we can reflect, you know, what worked well and maybe what we might do differently going forward. So this is all in the spirit of continuous improvement to better the outcomes for the state of Oregon. With that said, I want to welcome you all. Do want to ask if we have, I think Ashley is on, is that right? Todd, keeping track of if we have quorum or not.
Yes, I'm checking right now. Sorry, I'm just double checking everybody's names. There are, I believe so. There are at least 6 people, so I believe we have met quorum today. Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And thank you all for being here so that we can approve our minutes. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the August minutes and then a second, of course.
I would move to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
Second, this is Venkat.
Thank you, Ken and Venkat. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Does anyone oppose? Does anyone abstained? All right, the minutes shall carry forward. Okay, so let me start off for my section, I want to start off by talking about the agreements that we spent some time with about how we do our business, how roles, responsibilities, et cetera. And we had spent time together a while back saying, you know, what are the agreements about, you know, about us that we agree and we can commit to. And I made a copy of those, which I'm having a hard time finding right now. Those ones I wanted to highlight that were especially, I thought, applicable. So these were our member agreements, and recall that was kind of fun. Sherry Dunn helped really guide us through this exercise. And of course, there's the 4 categories, and they just so happen to spell out WTDB, which I thought was really great. So working collaboratively, transparency and trust, data-driven decision-making, and bold and innovative. And I feel like all of those categories or those titles are things that I've heard many of you talk about in that last meeting and prior meetings. So I think these feel like they're right. Of course, if there's anything in here that you think is not right or off or whatever, we can always talk about that. But the purpose for today was to remind us that we made these agreements. And in particular, I highlighted one from each section. So under work collaboratively, I think they're all great, but in particular, I highlighted engagement and participation and how important it is that we have active participations in these discussions and showing commitment to our mission and responsibilities. And then under T, I highlight transparency in action and decisions, ensuring that all board activities and decisions are conducted openly, fostering trust among members and with the public. To me, that means that we talk about things, even if they're difficult to talk about, or perhaps they feel controversial, or we know that some people feel one way about things, but somebody feels about it another way. It doesn't mean we don't talk about it. It means we talk about them with respect and dignity, but we talk about those things and we talk openly. Rarely, as I think we all can agree, are things like one way or the other. But as long as we operate with trust and transparency, I think that we're able to work through really complex issues. Next, big one that we've been talking about a lot lately, data-driven decision-making. One in particular that's important to me is dedication to outcomes. So focus on setting achievable, measurable goals that reflect real positive changes in workforce development. So how are we measuring those? What are the outcomes we're after? It can be tempting at times to measure activities, which are really important in our leading indicators, but then what are the outcomes? So what? Why did we do that? For what end? And asking ourselves those questions. And then finally, bold and innovative. And we talked a lot about that at our last meeting, like really exhibiting boldness in vision and action and challenging each other and our sort of our body to being bold, again, for the benefit of the citizens of our state. So just wanted to remind us about those. And then next step, Todd, I'm going to ask you, unless I think Sherry is not able to, wasn't sure if she was able to join us. And I think she's under the weather. So I think, Todd, you're going to handle roles and responsibilities. Is that right?
Yes, thanks so much, Ann. Great overview of the agreements. Appreciate you covering those off. And Sherry is sick. She did send Ann and I an email. She might join us about 1:30, 1:45 if she's able. I think she's trying to coordinate with doctor appointments and such. So I'll stand in for Sherry. I'm sure I won't hold a candle to how she would do it, but Ann and I and Sherry thought it would be great to revisit this document. I know many of you have seen it multiple times before, but thought with some newer members and newer folks involved in the work, it would not only be good for them, but it's been a while since you've seen it, so as a good refresher. So in terms of roles and responsibilities outlined in this table, they come from a couple of sources. One, Section 101D of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Two, House Bill 3437. Three, Oregon Revised. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. I think the agreements are still showing. Were you intending to have this document up?
Oh, sorry. I was like, yes, thank you. Ashley, could you pull up that next document? Thanks, Ann. I was looking at my notes and the few screens. So no,
Is that good?
Not that one. It should be the one that says roles and responsibilities of those that you received.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Oh no, thank you so much.
There we go.
And by the way,
Yeah.
by the way, just context. As you know, Sydney is usually the one who helps us with running the board meetings in terms of support. Sydney is out sick, and a big thank you to Ashley for standing in for her. So we really appreciate you doing that on short notice, Ashley. Thank you so much.
Not a problem at all. I believe I have the right one up, and
Yep.
I'll review the agenda so I make sure I follow along a little better. Thank you.
Oh, no worries. Thanks again. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so on this document, as I was saying, language comes from House Bill 3437, also from Code of Federal Regulations, what is it, 3111, ORS, and I think I've, and also the Future Ready legislation. So there's four key buckets regarding roles and responsibilities for the State Workforce Board. You can see those across the top: advise and assist the governor's office, roles and responsibilities around accountability, some budgetary, and then board operations. Like Ann, I am not going to read this whole thing, but encourage you to refer to it when you're wondering about your role, or just as a resource to continue to better understand and lean into your work on the state board. So a few under advising and assisting the governor that I wanted to call out were these. Review of statewide policy programs and recommendations to align workforce development programs to support a comprehensive and streamlined workforce development system. Another one that really, I think, warrants being called out are the development of strategies to provide outreach and improve access to individuals and for individuals and employers. A third, develop and expand strategies to meet the needs of employers, workers, and job seekers, particularly through industry or sector partnerships. One more that I'll mention is to identify and disseminate information on best practices, including one-stop operations, effective local workforce development boards, and effective training programs. That one relates directly to Stacy being here today to present with us. Moving over to accountability, I'll call out maybe 4 or 5 of those. The first one at the top there, develop and continuously improve the one-stop delivery system across the state, including the workforce boards, one-stop operators, and partners, as well as providers. The second one after that, develop and update comprehensive state performance and accountability measures. We're in the process of moving forward. Oh, by the way, as another example, with Woolsey Group and Lindsay Woolsey on the next iteration of our 2-year strategic plan for 25 and 26. And as a part of that work, Lindsay will also be helping us move our already established and evolving WTDB scorecard forward. Moving down to sort of the bottom of that column, there's another one I thought worth calling out, which is to hold state workforce agencies and local workforce boards accountable for performance goals and system outcomes. Right below that, one on Future Ready, which came from the Future Ready legislation around convening statewide consortia, particularly in healthcare, manufacturing, and technology. Over to the third column on budget. 2 I wanted to call out are the bottom 2 bullets. Recommend uses of statewide reserve funding and state general fund workforce investments when available. And secondly, collaborate with state boards or commissions on strategic investments. And then last but not least, over to board operations. This is where I and Clay get more involved in terms of maintaining board membership, meetings, operations in accordance with federal law and, of course, our bylaws. So I'll stop there and toss it back over to you, Ann.
Thank you, Todd. Okay, next, Venkat, I think you are up to review the strategic plan.
Thank you, Anne. Let me see if I can share my screen. Is that visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So thank you for asking me to come and talk to you today about the strategic plan. Todd asked me to share what is it about the plan that resonates with me. I wanted to give you some examples of technological advancements, which is near to my heart, and then give you some call to action that I felt would be valuable to share. So in front of you is the strategic plan, which has the vision and our position and values. And the second page of it is highlighted in terms of a scorecard. What is encouraging to see is there are lots more greens and yellows than reds. And this is a measure of progress that we've made towards some of our imperatives and objectives and initiatives. So in terms of what resonates with me, I think 2 things. One is the vision of equitable prosperity, because it aligns with my goal of using technology to bridge gaps in education and workforce development. And technology can help us ensure that opportunities are accessible to everyone. And I want to highlight the board's commitment to innovation and that you shared about bold and innovate. And so that this part that I want to stress is how emerging technologies can drive innovative solutions while ensuring diverse participation in workforce programs. And if I share a couple of examples of technological advancements, in particular, AI is just revolutionizing learning experiences by providing personalized education and automating administrative tasks and enhancing digital literacy, because we are moving very fast from an industrial economy to a digital economy, and we need to reap its advantages. So this technology can help tailor the learning paths to individual needs and improve outcomes for students and reskill workers by bridging some of the skill gaps. We can match the right talent with the right roles. We can address skills shortages in very critical fields like STEM and data analytics and cybersecurity. So that leaves me with some call to action. So there are three things I can think of, and I'll quickly mention them. The first one is the need for a clear understanding of Oregon's workforce system. And this is a place where we can, again, use technology to increase awareness and improve branding, ensuring that our stakeholders are informed and engaged. And that is part of item 6 here under objectives. The second call to action is collaboration, more collaborative efforts. So encouraging collaboration among state agencies, businesses, educational institutions to align our efforts in workforce development. And again, here's where we can leverage technology as a unifying force to achieve some of these shared goals. And the last thing I'd say is I want to be an advocate for embracing change. So I'd like to inspire our board members to embrace technological change as an opportunity rather than a challenge to create more equitable and efficient systems. So that is my quick update. And Todd, I don't know if you wanted to share something about the scorecard, about the areas that are red, and if you had some updates that would be more helpful, but I'm happy to take questions as well.
Oh, I think that's fine, Venkat. I don't necessarily think that digging down into the details now is necessary, but I guess I would encourage all of you to take a look at this. We'll send out a post meeting sort of packet and include this. It's a little bit late to the party, so it wasn't in the original packet, but I would encourage you to take a look at it. As Venkat said, it is good to see more green than yellow and red, and particularly few reds. But as you look at it, I would encourage you in particularly to look at the yellow and to look at the red. And if there are items that you see there that you have interest in and want to engage around, please feel free to reach out to me directly or to Clay so that we can better understand your thinking, your passions, and areas that you want to engage in. Because I don't necessarily look at the red and the yellow as bad. I look at them as opportunities for improvement, as Ann said, in the spirit of continuous improvement earlier. So yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out to us staff if you're interested, and we'll figure out ways. And then I would also say, I guess, Venkat, I tossed out an offer, well, maybe a statement, then an offer. The way that a little bit more detail around the development of the 25-26 strategic plan, the way we envision sort of managing that is that we'll utilize the executive committee as we have in the past as sort of the advisory committee to the development of the strategic plan. I've already met preliminarily with Lindsay Woolsey, and we do want to stick with a one-page front and back. If we can make it shorter, she's a fan of that. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess be prepared for more to come around the strategic plan. This may require some additional meetings, maybe a retreat and some in-person work. but we're excited to take stock of where we're at, what we've done, and then with your help, determine where we want to go in the future. She's also going to help us with the further development of the scorecard that we have started for the Workforce and Talent Development Board. So yeah, keep that on your radar, and we look forward to working with you as we move through that strategic planning efforts.
And I'm happy to help with some large language model tools to refine it too. So.
Ooh,
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Venkat.
love that. All right. Next, we'll talk about joint priorities. Ken, I think you're on deck for that.
Great, thanks, Sam. And before I move on to my topic, I just also want to mention on Venkat's strategic plan that the exercise when I was chair was helpful to keep this group organized and focused. But I think when it probably meant the most was during the pandemic, when we were in a crisis situation, and it was easy to lose focus on the goals and priorities of this board. And so having that strategic plan was extremely helpful, especially during the hard times when, like I said, everything seemed to be in crisis mode. So I just had to at least throw that in there. Todd asked me to talk about joint priorities, and I'm just going to read those to you, and I'll probably make a little commentary from time to time. But for the most part, the first one is concretely improve the connections between employers and the workforce system, consistent with economic development priorities. That is one area that I think in the past we have struggled with, is especially the economic development and having that connection to them to find out that we're trying to be on the same page and being a partner together when it comes to opportunities. So I love seeing that one on there. The second one was concretely deepen the integration of K-12 education in the entire workforce system. This is something that's been worked on in other states, and when they've really focused in that area, it seems that they've had great success. And I hear a lot from employers saying that we have to engage early with the educational system, not anything post K through 12, but during those early years of development is when employers are really looking for greater involvement with the workforce. So that was also a good one to see on. Improve workforce systems impact by investing in new and existing targeted resources that support workforce-based learning. I think that one kind of speaks for itself. Advance equity and by identifying and closing the largest gaps in participation and access to education, training, and job placement services. And then lastly, complete necessary steps to align data to the WSO system to result in shared state and local performance report cards. And this is, I think Todd mentioned earlier, I think even Ann mentioned it as well, that this data is always important, and it seems to get left on the back burner. So again, it's important to see it there, to see how well we're doing as a group and as a board, and as a scorecard or a real-time dashboard to see how much progress we are making as a group. So again, it was great to see. And that's all I had.
Thanks, Ken. And this reminds me, Todd, just as an aside, I probably should just email you this, but I'm thinking that when we go to refresh the strategic plan, we should think about how we simplify and bring in like some of our agreement statements might find their way in there, and then maybe like the joint priorities. So we start to have, sort of a source of where our stuff is, because it can be confusing. Like you have joint priorities, you have the strategic plan, you have the this and you have the that, kind of bringing everything together.
I love that. And can I add one more thing?
Of course.
One of the things that you and I talked about way back upstream, and Clay and I have talked about several times, and I've shared with Lindsay Woolsey for our strategic planning, is we want to bring back the mini reports that we have forwarded to the governor and the legislature over the last several years, and make them a part of the strategic planning process, particularly regarding recommendations that were made, and then what's happened, like we made these recommendations and what action took place, what implementation transpired, and what success or not has resulted. So we're going to bring that into it as well. Thanks, Ann, for the suggestion, the agreements and the priorities.
And then our kind of next review then will be on our talent assessment and the ranked priorities from that. And Charlie, thank you for agreeing to lead us through that.
Yeah, thank you, Ann, and thank you everybody for being here. Before I begin, and hopefully you've all had a chance to review the letter that Todd included from the WTDB to the governor that was part of your digital packet, but the top priority, 5 priorities, I'm going to reread those, but I'm going to reread those with some emphasis that I'm going to talk about a little bit more as I go on. So the first one is promote. That's my emphasis. Greater engagement and collaboration between K through 12, higher education, other local workforce development boards, and industry. Number 2, implement strategies to increase affordable housing supply, including incentives for developers, rent control measures, and investment in low-income housing projects. Develop policies and initiatives to increase access and affordable childcare, including subsidies for low-income families and support for childcare providers and expand capacity. Reinforce the WTDB as Oregon's centralized workforce authority and sets the vision, goals, and strategies for the workforce development across the state, and has authority to hold multiple state, regional, and local level agencies accountable. Advocate for policies to improve wages for childcare workers, including increasing public funding for childcare subsidies, employer-provided childcare incentives, and professional development. As a backdrop, if anybody has not actually looked at the full talent summit or the talent assessment, it is a deep dive and provides lots and lots of information. But I think the piece is that it's also filled with a lot of these kinds of emphasis words that I'm going to talk about and probably do a bit of challenging of all of you in my next comments. So my contribution to the discussion is to walk us through the top 5 priorities that the audience of the Talents Summit brought together. But I enter this conversation with a bit of a conundrum, especially given now my almost 2-year path working on essential employability skills, as well as my past years serving both on the Oregon Workforce Investment Board, as well as being a liaison to the Talent Board, prior to it being collapsed and combined into the Workforce Talent Development Board. That conundrum is this: if we look at the language that is used to outline these priorities, particularly the words I expressed with my reading, and in fact, if we examine many of the roles and responsibilities or the priorities just talked about with Ken, embedded in the language is action and authority. Yet, as I sit here today, being reminded of our roles and responsibilities and the complexity of the entire workforce system, I question if the WTDB has either the ability to act or, in many cases, the authority to do so. Let me use the essential employability process as an example. Through sound practice, the WTDB surveyed and followed national trend and reinforced that survey information that there was a need for action, which was bringing industry and education together, collaboration, to create and incorporate, and I chose that word intentionally, by the way, EES into both education as well as workforce development. Once I personally reviewed this, I was hooked to take action, and the WTDB also chose to take action. We have largely, through the ODE grants to WESD, today created a rubric that spans K through adulthood. And I should also mention, of course, the community colleges as well. Same language, same basic learning, practice and assessment approach. It's been a win, but it just hit a wall. Once the money ended, the pathway forward was both clouded and severely constrained. And it's clear that the WTDB has no fiscal ability to support this kind of an activity, so that we lean into the agencies whom we gather as around our table to pick up the ball and now run with it, because we felt this was critical, a program that needed support for all Oregonians. Agencies have and had no answers or ability or desire necessarily to be able to pick up the continuing and sustainable acts of the EES. So I ask you, does the WTDB have ability and authority? Well, we certainly had the ability, and we did the collaboration. And quite frankly, I am very, very proud of what we've worked with and so forth. But the authority figure also comes to play. So this brings me to this discussion, simply wondering how conversations, how our amazing site visits and speakers assist us in truly advancing policy and strategy forward. I question this also based on how strategic funds are not touched whatsoever by the WTDB directly, but routed through local investment boards or distribution systems or separate channels, such as the HEC, for instance. I support the local boards. I support the HEC. And I believe that there's a clear place of structure. But I'm calling into question that structure a little bit in regard to those two words, action and authority, and where we fit within that. As I studied to prepare for today's conversation, I grew more and more confused based on this conundrum of action and authority. I'm sure you're all aware that we have a cascade of councils, commissions, boards, and so forth that all touch the path of priority and pathways of funding for our workforce development system, all the way from top level down to education. In many cases, we have duplication without alignment, a very, very common criticism of the multiple boards and commissions, which adds to our confusion. So let me return to the top 5 priorities and ask this of all of us. What do we, as the WTDB board and board members, need to do to draw focus and action to these top 5 priorities? And more important, are we considered that statewide expert that provides the credibility to our suggestions of action by either the governor's office or the agencies that either oversee us or are a part of our ongoing membership, or the local boards that have their own boards, their own priorities, and their own formulations for receiving funds and distributing those, which bypasses the direct hand of the WTDB. So 2 key observations and recommendations of the talent assessment. Number 1, to align Oregon's talent ecosystem, the WTDB should be reinforced as the state's centralized workforce authority. The WTDB is well positioned as Oregon's centralized workforce authority that sets workforce vision, goals, and strategies throughout the state. That was a recommendation of the assessment. Number 2, with the proper authority and capacity, and I emphasize those 2 words, the state could reinforce the role of the WTDB to help streamline efforts, prioritize goals, ensure consistency across workforce development strategies, and hold agencies and partners accountable. This increased authority would lead to more cohesive, effective, and equitable support for education, training, and industry needs. So as a business and an industry member, I not only represent the business or the cluster with whom I am attached, but I represent Oregonians' interest in convening for information and action. I walk away from our visits that we've had throughout the years actually, to the breadth of resources and the needs from our meetings, both amazed, but sometimes heavily conflicted that we need to do more. I want to do more. Let me leave you to the further discussion with this. Where does the WTDB fit in this pursuit as we step forward on these priorities? As we've talked about our roles and responsibilities and so forth, and how do we bring action to the words used to describe the priorities? I particularly lean on the words of action and authority. And I think we have great, in fact, terrific examples of things that have passed through both our eyes in our visits, as well as the competencies that could actually continue to escalate Oregon on a national stage, but certainly for Oregonians to bring about better workforce development and so forth. I love the priorities, and I love the fact that one of those is to bring the WTDB to a greater centralized resource. But I do think that we have work to do to be able to make sure that the public understands who the WTDB is, business and industry, as well as the agencies and the governor's office themselves, as we both are counselors as well as advocates. And quite frankly, back to an earlier comment, sometimes we just need to challenge the system and to have that capability. So that's my report.
Thank you. That was great. So all of those elements that we just reviewed, I want you to maybe just take a minute and just kind of write some things down that you want to keep in mind as we go forward, and practice with an example today of demonstrating action. And I would say, based on Charlie's challenge for all of us, acting with authority, because I think at times it's a little murky, and perhaps, you know, we've leaned back from that a bit, as opposed to, you know, waiting to be told you have the authority. And let's embrace this idea that we have authority, unless there's a clear line and we know we can't cross it or what have you. So I want you to bring that as you're thinking about, you know, what you've heard as we've gone through the joint priorities, the strategic plan, et cetera. Think about like who we are and what we're trying to do. And then we're going to practice in action what we talked about at our last meeting. And as a recall, especially if you weren't there, we wanted to see successful projects moving forward for workers, employers, and educators facing today's workforce challenges. As Charlie mentioned, the Talent Summit brought together resources and communities across our state, and there was just a lot of desire and energy to see the state move forward and see people step up, business, industry, the state, et cetera. How do we think about good ideas and pilot those, or promising practices, and how do we think about making them sustainable? So you heard him reference, and we've heard, and you're going to hear it again today, about, you know, just amazing programs, but then they're not sustainable. So what's our role in that? How can we help move things forward and make them sustainable? And then how do we think about what's our rallying point? And certainly employability skills is one of them. So having a rallying piece, you know, and something that we can easily point to and talk about for our work is always really powerful. So what we talked about for today at that last meeting is, do we have a process for how we move things forward to the governor's office, besides just sending letters and, you know, saying, here's what we believe, et cetera. So how can we think about our advocating role, et cetera? One of the things I wanted to share with you is Todd and I are committed to attending the OWP meetings on the go forward, and having creating more of a liaison relationship there. So we're extending to other agencies, et cetera, what we're working on, and looking for ways in which to align and bolster the work so that it's doubled up. It's not just our group working on something and somebody else working on something maybe adjacent to it, that we can really think about alignment and then in effect get after some of this duplication of efforts. And then who are those other partners, like the Clean Energy Coalition, the consortia, and other partners and employers. So thinking about like what role can each of us play in kind of reaching across and making sure that the strategy that we'll put together for our going forward is shared and embraced by our partners. We talked about the Education Service District can't apply, you know, for grants. So how might we apply for grants together in an aligned way? And example was Team Oregon Build, which we heard. And we also talked about being more tactical, that we talk sometimes very high level, but what are we going to do about things? And so to that end, Todd was given a homework assignment, or Todd and Clay, to bring back a draft of a framework, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. So I'll just pause there and invite anyone, whether you presented, you know, sort of our foundational documents that we use or pieces, or as somebody that's listening in, is there anything that I've missed or something that you want to add into the discussion? And then after that, we'll talk about the matrix and how we'll use it today.
And I would just say that I am super excited about this matrix after the conversation at our last full board meeting, which was also my first full board meeting. And I appreciate the quick action and discussion about how we can kind of move forward with this.
Thank you. And we're glad you're part of the group. Okay, I keep mulling and marinating, and let's practice today something that we decided we wanted to try at our last meeting, and then we'll continue to do this in the encouraging words of Charlie Hopewell, action and authority. So Todd, I'm going to turn it over to you to walk us through the matrix.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ann. Ashley, can you pull that up?
There we go.
Great. Can you zoom in?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay,
Awesome.
I'll scroll down.
Really appreciate it. Yeah. So thank you, Ann. That was great. So just as follow up, I think it was, I'll give Kim credit for it. I think I remember her calling out the idea of pulling together a tool. I think you called it a framework. I decided to call it decision and action matrix. Please keep in mind this is rough draft of a potential tool that we could use, as Ann said, to consider possibilities, hopefully be able to make substantive decisions as they relate to initiative programs, even some of these reports or research projects that we do, or other efforts to determine whether or not they warrant further action, and if so, what that action looks like. So as you might imagine, the top part of it asks for a description, then the name of the reviewer that's putting the program or effort through this decision matrix. And so first, in terms of scoring criteria, we wanted to make sure there was connectivity to all those things that we've just talked about, right? So does it align with those? And we've provided links to each of those documents you've already heard about, as well as an additional one, which hopefully resonates with, well, I'm sure it will resonate with Sarah Foster if she's still on, the governor's priorities. So that gives the person that's, taking a look at whether or not a particular effort warrants additional investment of time, resources, capacity, all the resources to sort of judge that alignment component. On to 5 is the initiative or program, a strong, promising practice. I mean, you've heard people talk about Team Oregon Build. I think all of you that I see on this call that went to the iBuild tour in August were like very jazzed about it and had nothing but great things to say about it. So in a situation like that, as a promising practice, what do we say? What do we do? What does that authority in action sort of look like? The same thing I think is true, obviously, with all the good work that Charlie Hopewell and Tom Goodhue have led as co-chairs on the Workforce Readiness Committee. Are these efforts supported by at least 4 key partners to gauge interest, to gauge engagement, and sort of value around the efforts? And then is the initiative aligned with DE, I, and A principles as another scoring component? And do leaders that are driving this work in number 8 there have a detailed, thought out strategy plan and maybe forecast on the amount of funding needed or funding strategies and expected outcomes so that you can gauge to some degree return on investment, right? It's so much more helpful if that's the case, other than, well, this sounds really good. A lot of people love this story. It's a great story. It feels good. Well, a little bit more behind it would be considerably more helpful. And then as 9, there, do you think that these efforts justify a legislative strategy? So that's what we've come up with so far. Again, we don't pretend to have all the answers, and I've chopped it a little bit with a number of you and got feedback. So very open to a conversation, and under the spirit of continuous improvement, making this, refining this to be the best it can be as we potentially start to use it. It does just take a simple average. And as I think, who was it that was, maybe it was Ken. I think it was a conversation with Ken Madden. We talked about whether average was right. Should some of these components or others be weighted heavier? And if so, why? Anne, did you have your hand up?
No, I'll say it when I get my turn back.
Okay. Well, you can say it now.
It's the perk of being in the chair.
No, it's all good. And then just the next one on line 16 there that you see is that we would, if this entire committee were the committee that was designated as sort of the initial deciders on things like this, we just take everybody's score, add it up and divide by the number who scored it, and come up with yet sort of a second weight for the committee itself. That's just one way we could do it. Obviously, there are others there. So on to part B. Well, before I go on to part B, I'll pause again. I know, Anne, you're going to hold your question for later. If others have questions, please feel free to ask them now.
Todd, this is Charlie. I'll just add a little one. I really like do the leaders driving this work have a detailed strategy plan and so forth. I think there's maybe a subsection we might want to think about, which actually makes those who are doing the project also think about it, is try to outline a quote unquote sustainability effort. And that could be determining what's the window of need, because it could be a survey that's going to take 6 months, or it could be a major project that's going to be ongoing and needs to be integrated into an agency. So that was the only thing, and I had not previously fed that back to you, but as I kind of hear you walk through this, that sustainability piece might be a kind of a subsection that, again, we also want it to be a tool for those that are wanting to step things forward, to just help them think through those elements, to say, this is terrific, I love the idea, but there's just not the system capacity, for instance. So
I have an add-on to that that's different from what I was going to say about the other thing left in my head. I wonder if there's and I don't know if it would be on the person doing the presenting or if it's on our end, or maybe a little of both. Should there be a question about, like, is your program in some form or fashion in existence somewhere else in the state? Because I think about the local workforce boards, and they may have done something really innovative, like, in Eastern Oregon, and somebody in Southern Oregon or just completely different part has now decided, not the local workforce board, but a person presenting to us that their community has a need, and we already have sort of the bones of it over here. And is there a way to sort of bring that together so we're not duplicating startup efforts, et cetera? So I don't know how to frame that, but it's just sort of like, maybe we're sometimes limited by geography and not knowing what's going on, and making sure that either the person presenting or us is doing a check on that.
That's really good, Anne.
Avoid duplication, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
And maybe it's just aligning, right? We would say, hey,
Mhm.
we want to help, and we want to introduce you to Kim, and she could help you think through how to set this up so you're not having all the startup costs in your community.
And I would say, as a statewide board, there's also value in building consistency
Mm-hmm.
statewide programs.
Anything
Just for some-
else that folks want to share or ask a question about before I go into part B?
So just a clarification, Todd, since I missed the last board meeting, is
Yeah.
this, in terms of timelines, do we apply the scoring criteria to existing programs or new programs? And who initiates programs? So for example, if I, as a board member, wanted to explore an immersive learning program, would I apply this scorecard and then come to the board with my assessment of what we should do?
I don't know, Venkat. I didn't have preconceived notions about that, but it's interesting as I was listening to Charlie talk and Ann talk. It occurred to me that if we were to use something like this, and this kind of got said, I think, it would be great to let folks know that have promising practices or have best practices that they want and think warrant scaling more broadly across the state, or somebody has an innovative idea that's got traction, whatever the case may be. I think it applies broadly. It would be great if they knew what the expectation was once they brought it to the board. So I think it would make great sense to let people know up front before they got into, like you talked about, Charlie, is it a 6-month plan? Is it, a 5-year sustainability plan that you've got going as part of this? I think it would be great if they had an idea what the expectations, format, and sort of rules of the game were up front. So if you were going to get into immersive learning program, if we can help design that so it stands the best chance of potentially being successful, that makes sense to me.
Thanks.
You want to take us to part B?
Will do. So part B is really around commitment, and of course, kind of Charlie to the timeline, and also Venkat. We called out scope, schedule, and budget. Not to be overly simple, but I mean, pretty standard around projects. And the question is, what will you do as a key partner to contribute to these efforts, and by when? And this is, of course, assumes that it scores well. I failed to mention the scoring we came up with. You probably saw it previously. We decided to score, just as an initial take, 5 or lower, no action, 6 to 8, sort of add to a watch list and track, and then maybe over 8.5, that would require action. So to this part, assuming that they score 8.5 or higher, what are you going to do to contribute? We came up with really 3, I guess 4, if you want to count other buckets around contributions. Would it be around funding or a match strategy perhaps? How much, or a percentage, by when? And then an area for comments. What you see there on those notes, I left those in particular after a conversation with Venkat, is sort of how do we think about K-12 STEM and ODE in sort of that K-12 space? Do we treat them as separate partners, or are there ways that we want to blend them together? After Venkat and I mulled over it for a while, we thought they warranted being separated, as it was cleaner that way. So, for example, K-12 at the local level, at the WESD sort of level, at the superintendent level, anything that's not Oregon Department of Education directly, but definitely Oregon Department of Education as a call out, along with the STEM hubs and network, is sort of where we landed. And similarly, if you look over to the right in the different columns where, we left the room for people to check, what partner they are, we thought it would be good to separate or consider separating Higher Education Coordinating Commission, community colleges, and university system. We left it, or I left it the way it is with HEC/post-secondary as the PS, just to sort of prompt the discussion on what you all thought it might look best like. So there's that piece. Then on to the second one, staffing capacity. If what you can contribute as a key partner is staffing capacity or FTE, what specifically would that look like to meet the needs or requirements around the effort, and by what date. And then last, resources. What resources can you commit to and contribute to, and by when? And then room for comments as well there. And of course, the catch-all of other. So I'll pause there, Anne.
Thanks, Todd. My comment was just from a process perspective. So we have somebody come in, they present. Are we filling this out together as a group following presentations? Are we filling them out separately and turning them in, and then, we sort of roll everything up? And maybe we figure that out as we go, like what lends itself to group activity versus individual and a roll up or what have you. But it was kind of a process, like how that would work.
Yeah, great question. I think Clay and I originally thought separately, and then we'd roll them up and average them in that number 16 total average score. But yeah, totally open to way to how that looks, Ian.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question. So Todd, is the idea that, so if it's staffing capacity, what specifically, like the columns across the right, is it to say that I'm going to have staffing from some of these resources, some of these partners? So I check and say, I have 5 resources from the employer, and I get employer resources from STEM, ODE, etc. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think originally there was another row right above 1 for the checkbox as a partner, as opposed to the way it looks now. But yeah, I yes, it's what partner do you represent, and then which of these 3 or other areas can you contribute in, and how?
That's a good question. So what other
Yeah.
questions do people have or comments?
And I guess one other question, resources, so we're already calling out funding and staffing. So is this resources beyond like people and money, or like what is row number 21 supposed to answer?
Yeah, another great question. So what it popped into my head and why I added that 3rd column was, okay, what if there really isn't staffing capacity or funding? What if we already have, I'm making this up, but this was in my head. What if we already have, for example, a communications department in one of the agencies? I know that, for example, in prior years, we've worked with the communications department over at the employment department to help us around branding and building awareness, promotion on certain programs like the National Career Readiness Certificate and Work Ready Communities. And so they didn't necessarily have or need, we didn't necessarily need extra staffing capacity. They already had a team whose roles were to take care of communications requests for the agency. So we worked with them, developed the communications plan, and they just integrated into their existing work because that was a part of what their day job was. So that's just one example. I think there's probably other things in terms of I don't know, meeting space, partnering. Like maybe another example is the upcoming Working Together conference that Kim and her folks are putting on. Wow, that's next week. And there's a resource. I don't think it necessarily means there's additional staffing capacity or funding that's needed. Maybe it's, hey, we want to have a session at Working Together around this particular effort. Here's what we want to do. And we think it'll, again, help build awareness. It'll further the brand. It will
Exposure.
get more people engaged. Exposure, yeah.
Exposure, yeah.
Makes sense. Thanks, Todd.
Yeah, you bet.
Todd, I'll just add, maybe you could change those two titles. One of them I was just thinking as I'm listening to the conversation, it could be consultative or assistance services rather than resources. And then the other one could be other materials. So it kind of highlights that. But you could also do the same thing by my sense is there would probably be some form of outline to the use of the model, and we could create a little bit of narrative behind that would allow somebody who's using the tool to be able to understand the particular category. So
yeah, Clint and
Yeah.
I had talked about that, just to have some directions on how to use it up front as the sort of front page, and then you'd flip to see this, right?
Right. If you can put the examples, for example, just putting examples gives you the context. So
Good. Any other questions or feedback? Okay, Todd, anything else from you?
No, I mean, thank you for all the great feedback and the conversation. If you think of other things between now and the next few days, please send them to me, and we'll incorporate into the next iteration. We really appreciate your time spent on this, and we're excited to see where it might go.
Thank you. Okay, so hopefully we haven't scared Stacy away with all of this discussion, because she's going to be our pilot person for this. But I know that she is a very courageous, persistent person in our state doing good work. So I'm assuming that she's undaunted by the discussion leading up to this point. So with that, I do want to invite Stacy to present to us and talk about a program that she's passionate about and leading called Mentor Match Teen Entrepreneur Program. She's going to share her story and leave some space for discussion, and then we'll release her, and then we'll talk about next steps vis-a-vis what we've heard, and then the matrix that we just went over. So Stacy, welcome. It's great to see you again, and I'm excited for the group to hear more from you about your program.
Thank you so much. Todd, thank you for inviting me, and I appreciate you all being willing to listen. So I have a very short presentation, and then, as Ann said, time for questions. So I created an entrepreneur program for rural teens that addresses the challenges facing rural communities and, I believe, the priorities of the Workforce and Talent Board. The purpose of the Mentor Match Teen Entrepreneur Program is to introduce rural teens to entrepreneurship and business as a career path so that they can learn how to create economic opportunity for themselves and others. By connecting juniors and seniors in high school to the business leaders in our community and showing the opportunities that exist, we hoped that they would choose to come back to invest those skills. Now, after 14 years, here's what we've seen. 30% of past mentor matchers have returned to our rural remote county with the degrees and the skills that we need, including accounting, finance, sales and marketing, business administration, software engineering, and leadership and management. Wallowa County now has 5 new businesses started over the past 7 years, thanks to past mentor matchers. All teens in the program developed their essential employability skills, learning specific time management skills, problem solving, business communication, how to speak on a telephone, and most importantly, how to be self-directed and accountable for their results. The program has proven to leverage scholarships and has produced 11 Ford Scholars, 1 National Federation of Independent Business Scholars out of 100 chosen nationwide, and countless scholarships direct from colleges, because it turned out having your own business is a distinctive characteristic. The program has proven to provide equitable opportunity for all. About 10% of participants have met the criteria for homelessness. We've had valedictorians, and we've had teens from the alternative high school. This program has proven to serve all students regardless of resources. The teens that have returned to our remote rural county are getting married, buying homes, and starting families, with 19 babies born to this group. And I just learned 1 more on the way. And that is significantly increasing our population of stable young families. They are contributing to the social sector, serving on nonprofit boards, coaching sports, assisting 4-H club leaders, and writing checks to support key fundraising, such as to our rural hospital. Last year at our big hospital fundraiser, there were 4 past mentor matchers there contributing financially. They return to speak to the current crop of teen entrepreneurs, which keeps the circle of mentoring going, and they even donate to my program. All rural communities and economic development organizations have reduced outmigration of youth and support entrepreneurship and small business at the top of their priorities. This program has made demonstrable impact on both. And I want to share some examples of kids. Celia Christopherson, she graduated from Williams College and returned to Wallowa County at age 25. A talented artist and illustrator, she launched her own graphic design and art shop, Steep Creek Studio, serving many businesses in the county. She is currently helping a teen entrepreneur in the program and helping him with his logo and design for his business. She is married, owns a home, and she's the one expecting the new baby. Joseph Parkman graduated in 2013 and went on to University of Oregon, a first-generation college student. He became vice president of the Economics and Business Club there, then worked in banking in Eugene before returning to Enterprise to become the general manager of Terminal Gravity Brewing. He is married with 2 children. Matt Perrin was not sure what he wanted to do after high school. He had not consistently lived with either parent and had a very difficult upbringing. In our program, a young accountant talked to the teens and inspired Matt to go to community college and then to Eastern Oregon University when he graduated in 2015 with an accounting degree. Due to a connection made in the Mentor Match program, he had a job as a staff accountant at Wallowa Memorial Hospital before he graduated. The hospital later paid for his MBA. Today, Matt is director of finance for our healthcare district, an employer with over 250 employees. He makes over 6 figures, and he is happily married with 3 kids, and he just purchased his 3rd property. So Ashley's put up thank you, Ashley, perfect timing. So Shelby Graining Eggert, shown in this picture here, she graduated in 2012 and from Enterprise and went to beauty school in Lewiston, Idaho. Going to school all day and working at Arby's at night to support herself, she thought there had to be a better way. Using her entrepreneurial skills, she worked for a reputable multi-level marketing company, quit Arby's, and made a comfortable living. When she found herself pregnant without a reliable partner, she moved back to Wallowa County, borrowed $5,000 on her sister's credit card. Her mother had passed away from lifestyle issues by that time, and opened her own salon. She paid back the loan in full within 1 year. Shelby was 24 years old. She is now happily married to a wonderful man who adopted her son. They have a daughter as well, and they are homeowners. And she's expanded her business twice. Eric Repka went to Lewis and Clark College on a Ford scholarship and co-founded the Entrepreneurship Club there. Today, Eric is an expedition storyteller, and he travels the world documenting environmental issues such as plastic washing up in Antarctica and human waste on Everest. This picture is from a recent story you may have seen in the news of the discovery of the long-lost boot of missing Mount Everest climber Sandy Irving. Has anyone seen that story? Yeah, anyway, there is Eric Repka. He was on that team. He is credited with just seeing the boot and discovering the boot. And so now his story is on ABC News and his photos on the New York Times, on Nat Geo. And of course, I texted him immediately and roped him in to come and talk to my current crop of entrepreneurs. So there are too many examples to mention of internships, apprenticeships, jobs, leadership camps, and other connections that have grown from this program. And Ashley, you can take the picture down if you would. Since 2019, I have tried to bring the Mentor Match Teen Entrepreneur Program to other communities. And I run into the problem that Charlie talked about. There are great people and lots of agencies. They do not have the ability to make a decision. And I finally came to that conclusion. It wasn't that they didn't care. It wasn't that they didn't like my program. It was that they do not have the authority to take action. And so I have struggled since 2019 to try to bring the program. We succeeded in Harney County for 4 years, serving teens, including from the Payette tribe. So I wore my earrings today from Robin Holtby, and that was her business. Halfway, Oregon ran its second successful summer program this year, and they have funding for a third year, and then that's it. They've told that's all they'll do. And then thanks to the Rural Development Initiatives and Amy House, we launched our second year in Othello, Washington. Our annual Rural Teen Entrepreneur Summit brings these groups together each year, and Business Oregon highlighted the Rural Teen Entrepreneur Summit of 2023 in a video that you guys may have seen. I recently met with Kaylin Lane and Mauricio Valerio from the Ford Family Foundation, and they are very interested in the program. I see this aligning with a number of the Workforce and Talent Board's priorities. Number one, it's a strategy that supports career pathways regardless of academic achievement. And that gets back to that equitable opportunity. We were able to take those kids who aren't academic, zero support from family. They're not going to community college because they can't support themselves and pay for that. So we found pathways for them. One boy who had never seen an example of work before, we got him started at Terminal Gravity as a cook, and then he had his first job. He had a positive experience. He moved to Lewiston eventually and was able to get a job there. So another young woman, we said, go work at Starbucks, Walmart, or McDonald's, and understand that there's a whole machine behind the counter of these places that wants to invest in hardworking young people. So she got a job at Starbucks and kept rising, was assistant manager, then manager of a store, and then was eligible for their college program and took advantage of that. So we're able to take teens, regardless of their resources, and help them make that first positive step. The program has proven to connect high school students with what the business community needs, which helps bring them back home and gets them employed. It brings together education, the business community, and the social sector. It provides equitable opportunity for all because it's free for all. And I think that's critical. By making it free for everybody, everybody starts, you don't have some paying because they can and some scholarship because they can't. So it creates that equity right from the get-go. And it also serves all levels of teens. And it shows teens that now, no matter what their resources, they can create something. When I first showed up at the public comment, the last meeting, my question was, what is the channel by which a successful Rural Teen Entrepreneur Program proven to deliver results for the teens and the communities they're from gets scaled to other communities? And I'm hoping today we can get a few steps closer to figuring that out.
Thank you, Stacy. That was great. What questions do you have for Stacy? And maybe glance at your matrix and make sure you're feeling like you heard enough from her to help you fill out that form in a few minutes. So take a minute, look at the form, and make sure you get your questions asked. And so we'll start with Kim.
Hi, Stacy. I am Kim Parker-Jadenis. I'm the director of one of the 9 local workforce development boards. And I just want to say we have a retreat every year, and we are very intentional about going to rural parts of the state. And last August, we were at Wallowa Lake Lodge and spent a fair amount of time at Terminal Gravity. So thank you for that. It was fabulous. We loved it. And it was great to support the economy and just be somewhere together and do some really good work. How have you been funded to date? Is it all volunteer? Is there any funding that you have been successful at acquiring?
Yes. So this was funded initially. I created the program. I shopped it to economic development groups. They turned me down, but I went because I think they saw it as a youth development program, and I can see that now. I went to Building Healthy Families, and they said, oh my God, yes, we want this. We have money right now from Oregon Community Foundation under their tutoring and mentoring. And it was a 3-year program. So after the first 3 years, I was wondering if I'm then out of business, but they have funded. So Building Healthy Families administers and funds my program in Wallowa County. And they take care of all of that. I have no idea where that funding comes from. And they pay me. So I am paid. I'm not getting rich. I'm not buying any yachts, but I am paid to run the program in enterprise. And so I get paid $12,000 a year, and that has to include everything. So that includes buying notebooks, buying materials. Best practices is food. So I make dinner for them, field trips, the Rural Teen Entrepreneur Summit. We do a leadership and innovation tour every year, and we go to Seattle or San Francisco or New York or DC or somewhere, and we fundraise for that. So the kids pay for that.
Stacy, this is Charlie. How would you, I'm unclear on how you could scale this. In other words, would you do it as your organization, or would you do a train the trainer program, or what's your theory on how you would scale this?
So great question. And what we've come up with, and I worked with Brad Addig from Foundry Collective, who was super helpful, Brian Twite in Baker County. And I created a notebook, a train the trainer model. So an advisor notebook, a boot camp for advisors. Then COVID hit. So we worked with Brett Carpenter, who's a professor of entrepreneurship at OSU. He helped me create a video program. So I have the whole program in videos that are on the Reinventing Rural platform. And so I see it as being a pretty well wrapped up with a bow on it as, hey, here's the notebook, here's the program, here's the schedule, here's what you need. You have access to these videos. I do a boot camp, and then I do a coaching twice a month, coaching for just 20, 25 minutes. How's it going? What do you need? Where are you struggling, to keep everybody on track?
Okay, so then as a follow-up to that, so you heard in my comments and so forth that the WTDB is not a quote-unquote fiscal agency. So we have no funds to be able to distribute, except we do have periodic grant things. But so what would you be asking the WTDB specifically in regard to your program? What are some of the things that you want?
Well, what I'm looking for, and why I jumped on the public comment meeting, is I am trying to find the person, and you touched on it, with the authority to make this decision, to say, yes, we want this. And that person doesn't seem to exist, or at least they're not easy to find. There's a whole bunch of agencies doing, like I've met with Workforce Oregon and Aaron Carpenter. And again, this is going back a few years. Leaders of nonprofits, the economic development organizations, Brian McDowell for Business Oregon, Brian Plinsky from Business Oregon. I kept talking to people. They all said, great program, sounds amazing. No one has the ability. There's no process that someone could say, yes, okay, Charlie Hopewell, he's the guy. He can say yes. And if you're in business and sales, you know that you got to get to the decision maker.
Right.
And so I'm hoping you guys can tell me who that decision maker is.
Okay.
So can you help me a little bit more, Stacy? Sorry, I was doing a little bit of typing and such. When you find, when you find the person that can say yes, what are they saying yes to?
They're saying, yes, we want this program in our community. And yes, we will be just like Building Healthy Families is for me. We will be the funder and administrator. So we will hire an advisor, an entrepreneurial coach. We will provide the space, for meetings. We will provide the oversight, the funding, both applying for funding, the money, and then usually the reporting that goes with that, and the insurance, the liability protection.
Would this be for like this entire scaling operation, or like, are you expecting to do it at a county level, and for every county, or?
Yeah, rural county, for Loudoun County, we're so small that we do it at the county level. So most rural communities are pretty small, so it would be at the county level.
It appears though it could be at a district level or even at a building level if you had a large enough population. Is that correct?
Right. Yep. It would depend on that. And I would say, I have an average of 10 kids a year. 12 is an ideal number. 14 is a lot, I learned. So you don't want to have 30 kids in this program with one advisor. So I would say if you were in a larger area, you would want more than one program if it became that big.
What about community-based organizations that are already serving this population? Or are there, I know that
such as?
Boys and Girls Club.
Again, we don't have one of those here. So,
Okay.
I don't know if that would be an option in other communities, but here, Building Healthy Families has been a great partnership for me. But the reason it's a great partnership is you had a total go-getter as the executive director. And she went, this program was presented to her in the end of July and we launched that September. So she was where other people were like, someone told me, we need at least 2 years. It's like, are you kidding me? So that goes back to action and authority, like Charlie said, it's the person and that will take action and who has the authority to do so. And so it's finding that person and whatever agency they might work for, whatever their capacity is. It could be a Rotarian, it could be a chamber board member, but really it takes that champion. In Halfway, it's Debbie Lawrence. So it's administered by Pine Valley 2050, but she was the cheerleader that heard about the program from Brian Twite and Baker and went, we want this. And she went out and did the work to get it going.
I have a
Stacey.
follow-up question. Oh, sorry, Charlie. Real quick, the person would say yes to funding an advisor or coach, provide space for meetings, oversight on grant making and reporting, liability insurance, and that would be at the county level. Would it be fair to assume, Stacey, that on average, based on your model, would be 12 grand per sort of soup to nuts as a package? Or
no, I would say, because again, the 12 grand is just paying for me. So there's cost associated with Building Healthy Families. So Brad and Brett and I came up with a tentative budget a while back, but we'd say 25 grand. And I don't know, I'm making a wild guess because I don't know how people would see the administrative piece and what price they would attach to that. I am charging $6,000 a year for the program, and that includes me and the notebooks and the Rural Teen Entrepreneur Summit, the coaching, all of that. I think a coach would deserve to be paid. Then there's the administrative piece. So it's not, in my opinion, it's a very reasonable program to bring from a cost standpoint, but it's hard for me to guess, not knowing how an agency would see that administrative piece and what the cost would be to them. But $6,000 to get the package, the program delivered from me. Oh, I don't know if I'm next. Yeah. Thank you.
So I had a question. So have you ever connected with your local community college with something like this? Oftentimes they have business programs that are already there. And it seems like there would be the space and opportunity. And I apologize, I have barking dogs at home here. Is that a possibility? I know that as a county, we work very closely with our community college in terms of business development and economic development.
We don't have one here, so we're 2 hours away. Yeah. Okay. So we've worked we have a good connection with Eastern, and do tours there, and their Rural Engagement Vitality Center, I think they've been part of our, come to our Rural Teen Entrepreneur Summit and talked about Eastern. And so we have that partnership, but yeah, we're 2 hours away from a community college. Anne?
Yeah, I have a question. Is there a role that we could play in addition to I hear the request for funds, et cetera. Is there a role we could play in terms of connecting for different communities with other organizations where they might put your program into their program, fund it, et cetera? So I think about, for example, I serve on the board of Friends of the Children. And I'm not exactly sure where their newest post is going to be opening up. It's somewhere in Eastern Oregon. And, they do the mentorship from kindergarten to 12, but it's not this specific, like, how do you launch the teenager? It's making sure that they actually have an opportunity to launch. And I could see like a strategic partnership between your org and their org. And that's maybe something I could help facilitate. Or I think about like, what's that organization? The arts one, Caldera. Like there might be something there where they have funding from the Wyden family. Like maybe if they saw this as a service they could provide, they could fund you, and we could be instrumental in sort of helping with those partnerships. Or maybe that's something you've got covered. I don't know.
I would say the problem with that is then you start having to meet that organization's goals. And in order to get the grant funding from that organization, you need to have this element and you need to add that element. And I would not want to do that. The beauty of Building Healthy Families is they give the money and that's it. So they obviously I have to report back that how many kids I'm working with and what results we're achieving, but I don't have to meet any of their criteria. Does that make sense? And I don't know if I'm speaking, if this isn't, if I don't know what I'm talking about on that, but I've just seen that in other things. If you work with an art organization, for example, now all of a sudden you got to make sure you're producing so many art entrepreneurs or so many of this or that. The beauty of this program is that it's very, very specific to teens creating, launching, and running their own for-profit business. And that is the only criteria.
Hi, this is Sherry Dunn. Sorry, I'm on the phone. And I have bronchitis. So I'm trying to not talk too much. But I would say to rethink that, because that I wouldn't say that's every nonprofit. I ran a nonprofit for 5 years and I worked in conjunction with other people. There are alliances, there are collaborations that don't, there are people I work with who didn't have to meet my goals, right? But they had their goals and we were aligned, and sometimes it could help scale you. It's not that you're subsumed by the other business, but that the other business is can sometimes provide a formal agreement just for infrastructural support. So I would just say to, rethink that, because I agree there are other ways to go about it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that. I would just want to be cautious about that. It's just you don't want to get tied into where that is a requirement.
I see that Martha and Charlie both have a question. Martha was first.
Okay. Martha's muted. I can't hear you, Martha.
She's also off camera. I'm wondering if she forgot.
And I think she might have forgotten. Yes, I think you're right, Charlie.
Okay,
Charlie, why don't you go ahead?
See how I just snuck in there?
Yeah.
Well, Stacy, I mean, as I'm listening to this, I guess some feedback would be, I'm getting a sense I don't know how to narrow your scope down. And I think that's probably an area that we need to do. Are we talking statewide, or are we talking simply rural communities? Are we talking just within a particular geographic area and so forth? And so I'm a little confused in regard to that. And that can easily be narrowed down by you and so forth, but how you explain that and so forth. But the other side is, if you're looking, my suggestion would be, is if you're looking for who do I talk to, that's really based upon how large your scope is. If you're trying to do something statewide, then it may be something that you drive towards an agency, as an example, to try to figure out how they tuck that in their budget. What I'll tell you from just practical standpoint, for the employability skills, there ain't going to be no money from the state legislature in this 25 session. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. And so I think they're trying to figure out how they're going to keep their doors open in some cases. But the other part, though, is that within communities, there are those people that stand out who really want to build on the community. And they are going to be your Rotarians. They're going to be your people that are connected with the real estate community. Down in the Salem area, there's a gentleman that has now funded 2 career technical centers down in Salem, and purchased the properties, developed the properties, sold it back to the district for $1 5, 6 years later, and so forth. And those are your real promoters. And the way you get to them is that tough work of just trying to network into the community. Generally, the chamber will know who those people are. Most chambers, particularly if they have an economic sense in that. But the other one is that I was also listening to your thoughts, and even though this is quote unquote youth, it's also development of Oregon's economy. I mean, bringing people back into the community, particularly rural communities. They, the transition has been that the young people are moving out. So the fact of the matter is that you're bringing them back into the community is something. And I would personally, try to pitch Business Oregon again with that process, because I think they may be able to they might be able to provide something through a unique way to try to fund it. They, in a sense, fund it through a business that wants to develop an entrepreneurial core, as an example. Could be a business, could be a Boys and Girls Club. It could be one of your local community organizations for the youth. I was thinking about in Salem, the Kroc Center as an example, which is, again, totally dedicated towards a lot of the marginalized population and so forth in Salem. And they just have these amazing programs up to and including now employability skills. So, and they do that as a part of their community service. So pay close attention to community-based organizations. So
yeah, and I would say Building Healthy Families is that organization. Yeah, and no, they've been wonderful. So that's how I see it, is just finding that. I'm in terms of scope, is just finding those rural communities. This is geared towards rural. I don't see why it wouldn't work in any community, but we've pitched it as a rural program because rural communities are so desperate to stop that out migration and get their teenagers feeling like, hey, my hometown isn't so bad after all. And so that's what I see is when you have a John Day, a Grant County, a Harney County, a Baker County that wants to bring this program, is there a pathway that person who decides, yes, we want this in our community, can follow to make it easier? So they're not, like you said, Anne, duplication. They're not having to reinvent a process each time, that we have a statewide process that says, okay, you go here. Ford Family Foundation has funding that could go to this. And you follow this process.
Todd?
Sorry, I was getting a little bit of a delay on my hand going down there.
I love
yeah, so a couple of things, and maybe we already talked about these and we had that great conversation that Friday afternoon a while back, Stacy, but one of the things that we're going to do in terms of our strategic innovation grants, it's not a ton of money, and this is the State Workforce Board. It's about $1 million, is we're going to sort of shift from our typical grant making process in terms of the announcement and the applications. We're going to shift that process to more of a pitch process, with one of the intentions being that employers and business folks that are on the state board can participate more easily than the way the grant making process is set up now in terms of time investment and engagement. So it'll sort of be a panel of those folks on the board that want to participate, and that those that are interested, like yourself, in getting funding can come and pitch and make an ask, and they'll grade it, and there'll be a short turnaround time on those awards. That said, just listening to everybody talk, it also made me think that maybe we consider as a part of that kind of what we're doing right here. Maybe some of the criteria for board members to be evaluators is that they too have a skin in the game. So that if there's a opportunity but no public funding, or making this up, association funding or foundation funding, maybe that particular employer in the spirit of a call out on our strategic plan, which is around public-private partnerships, would be prepared to sort of offer a match, or, you know what I mean? I mean, it could get to where, again, I'm making this up too. Charlie as an employer, Venkat as an employer, Ann as an employer, and one other employer decide they can all contribute. And I'm going to go real low here so I don't get in trouble, but like they could each throw in $1,000 on behalf of the organization to sponsor one local region or county, as you mentioned, to expand for, you know, the next year. I don't know, just some ideas that are floating around in my head I wanted to share.
Yeah, and that's a great idea. Halfway, Debbie went to US Bank and they gave 2,000. So
Awesome. Last call, including Martha. Stacy, any parting words before we?
She's
Martha.
referred.
Did you
No,
have
I'm here.
Martha? Okay. Did you have a question? Your hand was up.
Oh, that was the one I had asked about.
Left over. Okay, yeah, that's what
And I hadn't,
yeah.
and I hadn't realized that you, I should have. But again, maybe you could do something with Eastern. It just seems there's a natural opportunity to have some kind of a, you know, program underneath some umbrella of business development and entrepreneur, you know, and working with that. But I don't know.
You know, I have one more thing to just maybe help Stacy. Charlie and I were just in meetings with, and Charlie's going to continue to meet with folks over at Business Oregon. And one of the things we just learned in one of our prior meetings was that it's a relatively new development at Business Oregon. I'm probably not going to get the words exactly right, but this is close. Melissa Drugi, who represents Business Oregon on the State Workforce Board, shared that this new development is around sort of two tools that they have to make investments in local communities, one being grants and the other one being loans, both payable loans as well as forgivable loans that come through programs at Business Oregon. And she said this new development was around public benefit or community benefit being weighted on the analysis and award of the grant or the loan. So naturally, Charlie and I were thinking the same thing and said, well, do employability skills in your mind count as a community benefit? Because they sure seem to in our heads. And she said, absolutely. So I'm wondering if another partner that might make sense to revisit, or we can connect you to Melissa, and Charlie can connect you to the gentleman he just mentioned earlier. It seems like a bit of a new development, and it seems like there's a huge community benefit for frontier and rural Oregon.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Todd. All right. Anything else for Stacy, or Stacy, any parting words?
Parting words are thank you so much. I really greatly appreciate Todd meeting with me after the initial, I appeared as public comment. That's how I got in front of the board. And so I sort of slid in the back door. And so I greatly appreciate the opportunity to present in front of all of you. And again, that's what I'm looking for from the board is there a process that could be created, and not just for my program, but any good program that is being done somewhere in the state that then could easily be duplicated in other areas. So that's it. And I appreciate very much your letting me present. So thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. Her comments remind me that I don't think I asked if there was public comment at the top of the meeting. Ashley, did you have anybody?
I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you, Stacy.
Good catch.
I don't believe there was any public comment, but I also shouldn't say anything because it wouldn't have been sent to me. It would have been sent to Sydney. So I can't really say for certain.
I'll check my email just in case, Ann, but I doubt it.
Okay. Whoopsie. Okay. So now I think as next steps, the ask is that you fill out the matrix. Mine is illegible, so I'll be filling it out again, but you can only vote once. And then I think if there's any initial more feedback for Todd on the form. One I had is, I wonder if people would want feedback from us that you wouldn't necessarily share publicly. So for example, what I would say on her presentation is she would benefit from a walking deck that has kind of just like 2 slides or 3 slides, what they are, what their purpose is, how big they are, that kind of thing. And so I would, if there was a feedback section, I wouldn't have told her that in front of all of you, although I just said it, but not, you know what I mean? And I would put that on there, feedback for the presenter, consider creating a walking deck or a marketing material or something. So I feel like the form would benefit, and then our people that are coming to us might benefit, unless they don't want feedback. That's my feedback for feedback. Anybody else, like as you were listening to her and you're kind of working through the form, anything other things that kind of came up for you that were like, oh, let's tweak the form this way, or no? Okay.
I realized I turned over to Clay and said we were amiss in not including like a community-based organization / nonprofit. Because what if it was Healthy Families or Oregon Community Foundation that was in a meeting with us at some point in time and wanted to click and, commit to doing something. So I added that as a note, and just FYI.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so Todd, next steps are we fill it out and we send it to you guys. Is that right?
Yeah, if you could, for all those that are comfortable, this is just a trial, pilot run. There is no consequence to this other than just informing the development of this tool. And anything you can provide to make it better, in addition to what you've already said in terms of, some guidelines up front, explanation of what, what to do to ensure that it grades out as best as possible. And then Clay and I can make those changes, and then we'll send it out for comments in a few days to get your impression after it's done. And then I think we probably need to have one more conversation, and maybe we can do it at the November executive committee meeting. And seems like after one more conversation, we maybe we could just do a little pilot of this. I don't know. We need to talk about that more, right? And then we'd need to vote on it and then try to start using it.
I have a question too. Like, what if in the meeting, like the presenter said, and somebody like Charlie says, "Oh, I can introduce you to Duncan Wise at OBC and blah blah blah." Does that go on the bottom part of this, or is that a different topic? And then do we want to track that so that, like, when we do our end of the year, like when we think about either accountability from the accountability lens, or good. From the what do we do from an advocacy lens, we could say, oh yeah, we had 20 people pitch to us, and here's what we funded, the money part, but then, oh yeah, remember Charlie made this really important connection. There's these other things that the board could be doing to help out. I just didn't know, does that fit on that bottom section under like resources, or is that something different that happens in the meeting?
Yeah, I mean, it could follow. Yeah, that's a really great question and a great idea. I mean, we could add another, we could add some, let's see, we'll have to noodle on it, but what comes to mind is we could add like partnerships, or we could add, I don't know, that's the only one that comes to mind. I was going to say connections, but it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I was thinking about like Martha had a great suggestion, and she might put it down, and then we can always send it to the person afterwards or whatever. I don't know, like just maybe something that's in there that's where we're using our networks.
If you put it on a separate tab, Todd, what you could do is also just do a reviewer's comment, which would then be their ability to be able to give feedback, reviewers comments / feedback. That way they could set it in a separate tab, and you could clip and paste and send that back to the organization.
That's a good idea.
Okay. Yeah, we can add a tab just as reviewers overall comments or something. Great. Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah.
Okay, so last item is clarifying expectations and accountability. And this is an invitation to all of you. This is really our chance to kind of talk about today, you know, the experience that we just went through. You know, what is your reaction? What should we do next? What are your thoughts following the meeting we had last month and then what we did today? And maybe is there something, you know, we want to do for the next meeting? So it's just kind of an open forum before we close to say, you know, what are some thoughts about commitments, depending on what lens you come from. If you're a business employer, are you from the governor's office? You know, I know Sarah had to leave, but we can always pass on to her. Are you from an agency or local workforce board or what have you? What are your kind of thoughts and commitments as a result of today's meeting? I know one commitment I have is that I want to be very involved in the next strategic plan, and I'm going to bring the lens of how do we kind of align all the different ways in which we think about what our commitments are and try to simplify that for us and for others, and then to take that out on the road and shop that with our agency partners and use my influence and leadership to try to align what we're doing and our metrics to the work that they're doing. That's my commitment.
And I'm going to go back to the 5 points and those words I emphasized. It almost feels like those need some further defining. I mean, if we want to bring action to something, let me take the first one as example. Promote greater engagement or collaboration between K through 12. Using the WTDB board and so forth, what does that mean? And what's tangible to say? What's that promotional activity? What are we really trying to do? And because it's too obtuse for me to be able to say that's something that I could objectively actually say, yes, we've done this and so forth. Does that mean bringing people together? Does it mean what? So to me, you could pick out those words, and I did that intentionally in my presentation as well, because what I wanted to try to do is to identify what are the quote unquote action words. So if it's a call to action, the question is acting on what? Plain and simple.
Charlie, do you think that I have the same question and have for some time? And Clay and I actually just talked in part about that this morning again. Do you think that, like we've talked about before, right? We can't boil the ocean. We can't be everything to everyone, like a Walmart tries to do. In order to have impact, like we've talked about previously, we've got to focus, hence the multiple attempts of getting ranked recommendations and ranked priorities. That said, yeah, that's a very high level sort of nebulous statement. Do you think that sort of what has to happen and maybe could happen, kind of, and to your commitment around the strategic planning work, is that we together either, I don't know if we just collaboratively, informally during a meeting like this, agree that, well, hey, you know, our focus on employability skills in middle school efforts and high school efforts constitutes a critical and an important piece of that K-12 integration. And so therefore, I don't know if we have to vote on it, or I don't know how you all think and feel about it, but because we're doing all that great work, which I would, you know, I mean, hats off to you, Charlie, and all the other people that are working on that, that seems to sort of check the box for me. And maybe that's good enough, but maybe it's not. I don't know if I helped with your question or just made it worse, but
no, I think I think that's what we've got to try to do is to kind of grind through it a little bit to really say, what does it mean? And are we doing some of these things? But you know, that's the other, that's which I think that's what you're trying to demonstrate is yes, we are doing some of those things. And yes, it creates, I mean, quite frankly, again, the WRC committee is a cross collaboration. it's been one of the most fun committees I've ever been on, because it's uplifting. People are working on something. And so it does represent that we're not only conveners, but we're conveners in action. And I think that that's maybe the piece that that we're looking for. So, and again, each of these have those words develop. I mean, when I look at number 3, develop policies and initiatives to increase access to affordable childcare, I'm going, I don't think that's WTDB that's going to do that. I think that's going to be other agencies. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe we need to pull this agency, and this agency together to say, what are you doing in regard to that process? Do you need more help, and so forth? So if we use these as those prompters to action and definition, that may be what we're trying to seek for. So I'll leave it at that. Charlie talks too much. Sorry.
No, it's good. So what is the action item on that one?
On which one?
What you just raised, or do we have a to-do?
Yeah, I think trying to define the action words of the governor's top, or those top 5 priorities.
Great. I love it. Okay. What else? Is your hand up a new hand up or an old hand up? You're on mute. I'm assuming it's an old hand up. Old hand up. Hand up.
It's an old hand up.
Okay.
Just fine. Okay.
Yeah. Looks like, let's see, anyone else? Venkat, you look like you're going to say something. And now I put you on the spot.
No, that's fine. No,
What's your commitment, Venkat?
So like I pointed to earlier, and I think I want to help with the refining of the strategic plan. So I can do that with some technology tools. I'm happy to do that. But the thing that I really want to understand is how can I help use technology to solve some of our main challenges that we are facing, particularly around increasing awareness and aligning our workforce systems. Now, it's a little broad, but I'm going to continue to think about it. I'm looking for some feedback. So, for example, I want to infuse some curriculum into our K through 12 systems. I tried really hard to make some new graduating requirements, but I've hit walls. And so now I've kind of resigned myself to being able to infuse some of these new technology tools into existing curriculum. But I'm looking for ideas on how I can be effective doing that. But that's my long-term plan. But in the short term, I'm happy to help with the strategic plan.
Nice, thank you. All right. Todd.
Sorry, I don't mean to stand between you gaveling down and my comment, but something else just occurred to me, and I was going to ask, do you think that in your efforts and to sort of lean into the strategic planning process and then shop it and partner with folks around the state, that would that include bringing in things like what Venkat just touched on? I don't know how to really say it, but if we wanted to figure out as part of Venkat's work how to infuse curriculum into K-12 around, I'm assuming that's AI, CS stuff, Venkat. Is that part of that strategic planning, shopping and collaborating around the state into maybe space and places that we haven't gone? Because when I heard you say that, I guess what I was envisioning is that you were thinking of maybe local workforce boards. Would that also include, say, going to, I'm making this part up too, going to places like Oregon State University and meeting with President Murty? Would it include going to K-12 institutions in the Corvallis area? Would it include going to ESDs or, superintendents to shop that piece of what finds its way into the strategic plan. Am I making sense on my question?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting idea, and I think it deserves more exploration for sure. And it's not something I can't do all that by myself, and certainly can't do it all physically. So I do think it's kind of a divide and conquer thing that our board can do, depending on, sort of where you sit geographically, what your areas of passion are, et cetera. So I think there is probably something that's where we all can play a role in terms of creating alignment, which will feel really, I feel like would be a really energizing opportunity for all of us. Okay, Ken, Charlie, and then we're closing. I am committed to us closing at 3 p.m. So
I'll be very brief.
warned.
Going back to Todd's just last statement too, and getting in front of some of the right people. I think Todd and I talked briefly about maybe having you meet with the chair of the HEC and have building a relationship or bond there. I did that earlier at mine. I think we have to really start engaging the governor, and that has to probably be through Sarah now that she's there. We have to start building that relationship and really, start telling her how are we gonna move forward with the governor's support. What are we going to have to do and get in front of her? I think there's also what Todd mentioned, the K through 12. The best people to get in front of that is the school boards and the school elected leaders to the school board. Mm-hmm. And those people meet in a group, just like the community college boards. They have an annual conference. Maybe we send a contingent to present in front of them on what the workforce board's priorities are and how we engage them, because the board members are elected just like every other state elected official, and they have an obligation to serve their community. So I think that's an important part. So I'll leave it at that.
I wholeheartedly agree with what Ken said, and we do need to go to the governor's office, and I think you need to go back actually ask them, what would it mean for you to look at this agency or this group as that central resource for the state and economic development? And I'd like to see the governor, the Workforce Talent Development Board, and I'd like to see Biz Oregon engaged in that as well. I think we need to drive economic and talent together.
Real quick, and I know we only have 1 minute left, but there is an obvious connection, as Stacy Green just illustrated, between what we're talking about and the Continuous Improvement Committee's work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. All right. Great engagement today, all. Thank you so much. Don't forget to turn your worksheet in and include any other feedback. And if it feels like, I don't know how to answer this, just do the best you can, because that in and of itself will give us great feedback in terms of how we use the form, et cetera. So thank you again for your engagement. Have a great rest of the week, and take care all, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for letting me be a part.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.